Bitcoin has been a roller coaster of a ride over the past 24 hours. We have seen a lot of volatility, a lot of liquidations, all due to these Bitcoin spot ETFs. Let's roll that intro and get right down into it. Hi guys, welcome back to another Walk and Talk video where today we are discussing Bitcoin spot ETFs. It's a bit of a cold one here, so do bear with me as I take a walk through the woods and kind of share my thoughts and opinions on what I think is unfolding when it comes to these Bitcoin spot ETFs. So, wow, what a day we saw yesterday, right? So we saw the official SEC government Twitter handle, or X handle, actually tweet out an approval for all Bitcoin spot ETFs. This was basically redacted, or I guess confirmed as fake news 16 minutes after the first tweet. And so what's really interesting about this is kind of everything that's unfolded around it. So it's a bit icy here. Try not to fall over. So what we saw was the SEC tweet out or post on X that all these Bitcoin spot ETFs had been approved. Now, the Bitcoin spot ETF approvals were kind of seen on Twitter as a big hurrah moment for crypto, right? Fantastic, we finally got the big news, right? All Bitcoin spot ETFs were approved, right? And we obviously have to take into consideration some of the previous posts by the SEC on X, and these were things such as Cyber Awareness Month. Basically, make sure you have multi-factor authentication on your accounts and all that kind of stuff. We also had a post, I think from October 2023 as well from the SEC, which basically read along the lines of the best source of information, the only source of information is the SEC. Now, that's not word for word because I murder it I do this walk and talk video, but you kind of get the idea. Essentially, the only news to be trusted, according to the SEC, is from the SEC itself. Okay. Then, of course, we see these other kind of tweets and posts about how you should always have multi-factor authentication on your device's accounts, prevent identity theft and fraud, right? And critically important, these are from our favorite clown, 𝗕𝗘𝗪𝗔𝗥𝗘, right? So we know that essentially, the SEC are telling us that we need to be really at the forefront of our cyber security, making sure that we, the everyday retail investor, is using multi-factor authentication on our accounts. And the only information that we, the retail investor, should be listening to and should trust is that from the SEC. So what do we see in the last 24 hours, guys? Well, we see the SEC post out that all Bitcoin spot ETFs are approved. From the source of the information being the SEC, we should trust the SEC. 𝗕𝗘𝗪𝗔𝗥𝗘 then comes out just 15 minutes later to tell us all that his account was compromised, or the SEC account was compromised, and these Bitcoin spot ETFs have not been approved. And so this leads us into a few questions. One is either they don't take their own advice. They did not have multi-factor authentication elements associated with their official SEC government account, which is just mind-boggling, right? Mind-boggling. Alternatively, maybe this tweet was always designed to go out. Now, my thoughts and opinions on the SEC. It's not good. I don't think anybody really holds the SEC in high regard. Ultimately, the organization under the last few chiefs, shall we say, has been questionable at best. But what if, and we say this quite loosely, and I say this with the utmost kind of respect for Twitter and X as a platform. We know that there are many third-party tools out there that allow you to schedule posts, that allow you to schedule content to go onto these platforms. X is no exception to that. It's the same as any of these other platforms that you can schedule content onto. For example, I'm recording this video right now at about 11 a.m. UTC, but it will go out at 2100 UTC. It will be scheduled on YouTube, for example. Now, I'm questioning here whether or not the tweet that was created by the SEC was scheduled to go out through a third-party software, and maybe an employee at the SEC actually just got the date wrong for the scheduled element, and hey presto, the tweet goes out. Now, if this is the case, that means that the SEC have already approved all the Bitcoin spot ETFs. And there's lots of speculation around whether or not the Bitcoin spot ETFs are now going to be delayed even further as they investigate what's gone on with all of this news around a Bitcoin spot ETF being approved, then obviously being countered and called out as fake news. Whether that investigation is going to lead into an individual who's employed by the SEC causing millions of dollars worth of damage to retail investors, probably gets swept under the rug like it usually does when it comes to the SEC, or whether or not this tweet is a simple human error on date. Did we actually see someone just accidentally put the wrong date in on a scheduled tweet, or was that third-party tool compromised? And actually they should have had multi-factor authentication on the third-party tool, or specifically the SEC account. Now, what's really interesting is that the SEC account, according to safety at Twitter, X, has no multi-factor authentication methods on it. This is hugely questionable, because we do see, of course, that the SEC are not living up to their own words. All mouth, or as they say in the UK, all bark, no bite. Ultimately, these guys, they say these things all great for PR and great for, getting what they want, but they're not helping retail investors with their continuation of negligence at the agency. But on the positive note, if of course these Bitcoin spot ETFs are approved, and that was a scheduled tweet to go out, well, that's hugely positive news for the crypto space, and something that I do want to focus in on a little bit, because I do think that Bitcoin spot ETFs are an inevitability. Now, I did talk a lot about Bitcoin spot ETFs in this morning's video as well, and I do think that there's going to be an impact on the Bitcoin price action in relation to the Bitcoin spot ETFs and all that kind of stuff. Now, yesterday was a bit of a test run for us where we could see what happens 15 minutes between a tweet going out saying that they've all been approved, and of course another tweet coming out to say that that's all fake news. That 15-minute window gives us a huge amount of insight into the price action of Bitcoin, and a huge amount of insight into the behaviors of how the market is going to react to the news. If you want to know a little bit more about this, then I urge you guys to check this video out right here, where I discuss that in great length.